All right, we got Sam Lee here. Sam,
Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
welcome to Charleston, brother.
Yeah, it's been great. It's a
Yeah.
great place.
Yeah, what are your thoughts so far on
I
the
mean,
scene?
I love that it's not like this giant city with all these skyscrapers. I feel like
Yeah.
that's what like most cities I picture. And like when I come here, it seems more like neighborhoody almost, with a lot of good food. So I'm always about that. But yeah, no, I like it more than the West Coast for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot take. I mean, I agree. Growing up on the West Coast and coming here now, this is pretty sick.
Yeah, no,
I'm
it's
not gonna
pretty
lie,
good.
this is pretty sick. I mean, then compared to Minnesota, I mean,
Oh,
Yeah,
not really
right.
saying anything
The
bad
weather,
about Minnesota weather-wise. I mean,
Yeah, the weather's probably the worst.
Yeah.
Worst part. It gets cold as shit.
I don't mind it though. The only thing I hate is getting out into my cold car in the morning. That's my biggest pet peeve, I think. And construction. Those
Oh
are-
yeah.
Yeah.
2 seasons in Minnesota, winter and construction.
Yeah.
Because once it gets warm, they start tearing up the roads and shit.
Yeah, I think I would like to get out of there. I've been there my whole life, so it's been.
okay, once you're done with DC school,
I got 3.5 years of school, and
Yeah.
we'll see how the fellows are doing down here, and maybe jump on the wagon.
Right.
yeah. So,
So
you want to go first?
yeah, I guess first question for you is you just said you're about to get into Cairo school, and before that, obviously you've been working at the U of M for
Yeah.
is it 2 years? Has it been 2 years now?
It's like
1.5 years?
Yeah, it's over 1.5. We're getting towards the 2-year mark here.
Okay,
In a few
yeah.
months. So
And we got a lot of questions about that. But
Yeah.
I guess my first question is, why are you going to DC school? Why are you going to be a doctor of chiropractic care?
well, mainly just because I see a huge tie-in between sports performance training, strength and conditioning, and like being able to do work on the body. Just because at the end of the day, you're playing contact sport or honestly any sport, and you're pushing the limits of your body. Like you're gonna have some breakdown, and it's in between prescribing exercises and doing manual therapy and using whatever other modalities you think are going to be beneficial. It's like I feel like you have a larger scope of practice to like do some of those things. I also grew up with both my parents as chiropractors, so that's so I grew up and I watched them help people out and help people get better, and I just kind of want to continue down that line. I think it's a cool skill to have. It's not going anywhere.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so I think I'd say that's the biggest thing. It's like just kind of making sure or trying to tie in together the strength and conditioning side of things with like the manual therapy side of things, because I've seen people be able to do that in a high level that can just like fix problems, and I think that's ultimately when you're helping someone out, that's ultimately what you're doing is you're fixing whatever problem they have. They're always coming to you with something.
Yeah,
and if they're not, that's a great spot to be in, right?
Right. I mean, 2 of the best problem solvers of the human body that I've ever seen, Jim Olson, Kevin Ziegler.
Yep.
I've never met Jim, but Kevin in
Yep.
particular, I've seen him work on people. It's the
Yep.
type of results you can get using some of these.
Yep.
I wouldn't say joint manipulations. For Kevin, it'd be neurological stretching, right?
Right.
But I mean, these modalities are really effective, and like RPR already, you're taking square one
Yep.
in mid-May in Minnesota, and I mean, it's going to be a deep bag for you, man. You're
Right.
going to be able to go in and really, really help a lot of people
No,
out. So
I'm excited. That's what school is about. I've got to just build the skills,
Yeah.
Obviously further the education behind all the deep sciences of the body. It's a very complex system, but yeah, keep on learning, gain a good skill set, and see what I can do. Start working on more people. I
Absolutely.
think that's the best thing you can do as someone that wants to work on the human body is you got to work on the human body to be able to figure it out more, It's not always going to be the same, I feel, so yeah, I'm excited. It'll be a good time.
Yeah.
It'll be a
We're
good
excited
time.
for you, man.
Where do you see that overlap between like being a DC and then being a strength coach? Like, where would you see it more as, hey, it's a separate session after your lift, or is there anything intra-set, intra-lift that
Yeah.
you think is possible to do?
I don't know. I just think it's all like one overarching system of like how can we improve the performance of the human body, and it's like I don't necessarily think that always lies in like adjustments. I think that like we put in breathing and RPR and square one modalities and certain grips and stances for exercises, like trying to be neurologically friendly. Like it's very much an overarching thought process on how you approach training an organism. It's like what are we going to do to this person to like elevate them, and like you can break that down on a system level, like if you think they're lacking like on a cardiovascular standpoint or something related to that, like mitochondrial health, or are they falling apart metabolically, is it just a tissue problem, like can their tissues just not handle the load, do we need to train those things, or I don't know. It's very much like how can we optimize all these things to like elevate their performance on a day-to-day level. We just need them to function at a higher level at all times. Because then they're recovering better, they're more trainable, they're going to hopefully get injured less if they're able to be better between bouts and get better between bouts faster.
Right. I think, we've had conversations before about if the joint's in the right position, if the patterns are correct,
Yep.
you're less likely to get injured. You can probably train harder. You can probably recover faster.
Yep.
So would you say that, what you're learning in the skill set of being a chiropractor and everything else that and you're going to learn over the next few years, is that more just putting somebody in like a state where they can train
Yeah.
and build their
Yeah.
capacity quicker,
I think
build
so.
their physical capabilities just a little bit
Yeah.
faster, more effective,
Yeah.
because we're sort of shortcutting, all the time and effort people spend on, okay, the muscle's tight, we're going to stretch it.
Yeah.
It's like there's,
Yeah.
it goes a lot deeper than
It goes a lot
some of
deeper
those
than
things,
that.
right? So
yeah. Some of the best people I know that are good at fixing people and working on people and making sure that they're elevating every system of their body and making them a better athlete, they don't have a lot of credentials behind their name usually. It's like, and I don't think credential means a whole lot of anything other than that. It literally gives me the license to broaden my scope of practice and do things that a typical strength coach would not be able to do on someone. And it's, again, I think there's a time and place. I don't think it's always the answer, but like I've seen it work enough times and consistently enough where I'm like, there's something here. You're not gonna be able to help everyone always, but I think that adding that to like something I'll be able to do is gonna help me in the long run to help get people better and get people out of pain, make them perform better.
yeah.
It's funny you say, like, talking about credentials, because one thing, Zach and I always joke about is all these letters you need behind your name just to, it's really just, like a gate of entry.
It
It's
is.
like, open the doors. All right, I got my foot in now. But
Yep.
then within that, I think you have the opposite end where people have all these letters behind their names, and you talk to them, and you almost feel like you're losing brain cells talking to these people because they're so, like, focused on what their letters mean versus how they can actually help someone.
Yep.
So it's really cool, just
Yeah.
hearing someone that wants to be a DC is like, yeah, the letters,
They're
they're
there.
what they are. They're there.
They're there. They have to be there to do what I want to do. But yeah, I already know like there's probably a lot of people that haven't done a lot of schooling and they're much brighter than I am in what we're doing. I like to think I'm good at what I do, but there's always people out there that think a little bit different, have something in the tool bag that we don't. Got to find those things,
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with how you do your job, right? Because I went to a lot of physical therapists that have
Yep.
not been able to help me in times when I really, really needed to get back on the field quicker.
Yep.
And I saw their process. I saw the way that they were thinking, right? They would go to their computer, type in your symptoms, print out a list of exercises. It didn't work. I would
Yep.
have to go to another PT. They would do the exact same thing. And I'd be like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But it really seems like the people that are the best at what they do are the ones that go and they test their own stuff and they do their own research,
Yep.
right? Or they find a concept and then they test it and actually see if it works.
Right. Yeah.
So
Getting down to the problem, you
Right.
know, they you have all these symptoms all the time.
Yeah.
That's always what people go after. But like again, if you're metabolically ill but you have all these musculoskeletal problems, it's like which one of those probably came first, You're just not recovering. Your tissues are not recovering properly. Now you have all these problems, Got to put them back in a state where they can do that,
And to that point, like almost our entire industry looks at the tissue first. Like, we joke about square one is, it looks at the nervous system, but it's not just that. It's like every PT always looks at, okay, your knee hurts. Let's figure out your hip or your ankle. But if those are fine. But if you even use the nervous system, they're fine. But then you look at their blood work and they got a vitamin C deficiency. And it's like, well, yeah, no wonder your knee hurts. Your tendons are screwed.
Yeah.
So, like, being able to actually look at, like, the metabolic side of health and actually see, hey, what's actually going on beneath the surface, not just, all right, what test do you feel? Oh,
Right.
you have knee valgus. Okay, so what?
Yep.
Like, actually looking on what's actually going on.
Right. Like we know the brain's always going to protect the body, but like why is the brain protecting the body? That's what we need to find out, I feel. On most people.
Yeah. So, kind of switching gears a little bit, the triphasic training system seems to be a little polarizing, right? Like some people kind of write it off right away when they look at it, especially the new stuff, right? And one of the first things that you and I talked about when I came in is the concepts are very similar between triphasic 1 and triphasic 2. The weekly undulating model, right? Like all these different things
sets.
are time sets, right? The bioenergetic, model of doing things, right? It all kind of just tracks. But how did this evolve into using many banded exercises and all these different things. I guess really the root of my question is why are there so many bands?
Why more bands?
It makes exercises faster or slower, and you can choose the direction of which that happens. And I think there's a lot of value into that when you're trying to program in a way that like you're trying to get to this end goal of speed, right?
Yeah.
You have to hit these other basic components in order to be fast, right? You got to be adequately strong, you got to be adequately powerful, and then you can put that all into your speed, you know? And with different band setups, you're able to achieve that. So like if we want it to be more like strength based, then we'll make sure that their bands are resisting them heavier in both directions, if there's bands involved at all. You know, again, you can modify this in whatever way that you think that is the best. And sometimes that's just simply adding more weight on the bar, making the velocity slower, you know? And then you just kind of keep going in that direction in power. So once you go into power, like the bar should be moving a little bit faster, you know? Maybe you're emphasizing like concentric portion. You want them to be concentrically pushing at a faster pace to put some more bands accelerating them that direction. Or if you want to overload the eccentric portion of that lift, then you'll put a band going the other way. You know, then they'll be getting thrown down into the eccentric portion a little bit harder. And then when you get to speed, same thing. Maybe lighten the load, add some more bands on it, make that bar speed a little bit faster. You know, so it's more of a manipulation of the exercise than anything. You know, because like you'll see a bench press in every block of triphasic training, but what's different is that bar speed. You know, it's like how fast is that bar moving? And again, you can rig that up. Like right now we have quantums at the U, which is super nice because you can just click on the machine to figure out what load they need based on the velocity we're going for. But if you don't have that, you just set up a barbell with a VBT on it, or you use, you know, whatever, an app or the good old eye tests to be like, we're going for this today, and you let them rip it. You got to put them in a spot that they can just go all out and be violent with it.
Yeah, we've been experimenting with this in a commercial gym setting.
Yep.
And it actually works pretty well if you can figure out how to set everything up.
Yeah.
It's so hard to copy the setup of Mariucci though. I think that's a lot of people that
I don't think you need to.
had told me like you're not going to be able to do it. But it's like, I mean,
it's possible. It's possible.
Right?
I mean, the biggest thing we've just run into is everything's just too far apart.
Yeah.
So the transition from exercise to exercise, we're getting 30 seconds of rest.
Right.
But in reality, you're supposed to be just ripping through it. So, you know, we're opening up here in the next month or something, about 3 to 4 weeks here. So then we'll actually be able to really like set up the facility so that, hey, we can just kind of go through in a conveyor belt style and just go from one to the other. But I mean, it's possible, it works. And I mean, the numbers that we've been putting up, doing almost, I'd even call it like a modified compressed model. Like honestly, we've been getting kind of lazy with, you know, following the periodization of triphasic 2. Where we kind of took like a deload and then we did some clusters, we did a bunch of stuff, but we still ran it for what, 7-8 weeks, pretty.
Yeah, we were in
like,
power and that was consistent.
Yeah, we like went through power and then even running it and now into speed. I mean, both of us PR'd. I mean, both of us 9.3 meters a second at three keys assisted. So it works.
Yeah, no, it's a great system. It works super well. I don't know, I guess like one thing that I've heard is like that a controversy of triphasic training is that it is just a system. And it's like, people call it like lazy because if you go into like a system, it's like you always have an answer for something that's just sitting there, right? And it takes away like the coaches side of things where they're like, oh, I think they need this, not what that is. And that is always still there. Like at the end of the day, like if maybe they do test into a certain like, you know, speed, power, or strength, and they test into that multiple times in a row, and it's like, wait a second, sure, like this might be a lacking quality, but hey, we might need to bounce them up to a different area for a little while to see if this improves this, you know? Because sometimes that happens. Sometimes you work in top end speed, but then your acceleration increases. It's like, you know, sometimes it's not that though. Sometimes you train speed and that acceleration gets a little bit worse, which is like, I would say more normal than what we see, but like there are times where like they test into power or test into strength like over and over again, and then we put them in speed, and then all of a sudden their accelerations start to pick up a little bit. So there's always that side of things, you know, like you got to figure out like, again, what kind of stressor do you want to apply to your athlete? Because if you want them to train for speed, then you got to put them in a speed block. But if they're going to be sitting in a speed block for, you know, 10 to 12 weeks in a row, it's like, that doesn't really make sense either.
Right.
You know?
You might lose strength. You might lose some of these other qualities that are important that athlete might need. Might have to lean on a little bit.
And you're also still always guessing.
Yeah.
Like no matter, even if you're testing in, you're still making an educated guess based on whatever data you have. So whether you're running a triphasic model, you're running block, you're running Eastern block, you're running linear, like whatever you're running, you're still guessing. Like, no one has the answer.
You got to guess and check. You got to make sure you're going in the right direction with them. And like maybe you have them do something for a few weeks that does make them slower, but then you put them in something the next week, and then there it is. Then the speed outcomes show.
Well, that's a big thing with the triphasic training system is you basically are throwing them in the hole and then pulling them up. But you're basically throwing them into the hole and saying, I'm going to throw you 3 feet in. You're not going to throw them in the hole and not sure how far down they're going to land. Like everything is very calculated. Even with what we've been doing, everything is very, very calculated. How we're going to run it. We're like you were suggesting, get a stopwatch, count the reps, or a beeper or something to figure out where they're at. And that was something I wanted to ask you is with the system itself. I mean, it works, but I wanted to ask you what part of it do you think makes it work well? Do you think it's the alternating anterior posterior? Do you think it's the idea of RSA where we're actually going after this repeat sprintability? Do you think it's the fact just increasing work over time? Like what in your opinion, what makes it, this really well-oiled machine?
Yeah, I think that it just improves the athlete's ability to handle and manage just external stimuli. It's like we were literally training the body to function at a higher level. That's, again, I think it comes down to like what is your approach to training, and like my one thought process always is like we need to just elevate them as an individual, as all their body systems, everything that is all the interconnections of everything. Like we need them to function at a higher level, and I think that the program does that really well. Like it does that like on a neurological level, on a tissue level. You gotta always assume and hope and be in touch with this, but like you gotta make sure they're sleeping well, eating well, doing everything outside the weight room well. Because if all that shit's out of place, then like the training's not going to do. You're putting your potentially in a compromised position because it is a lot of stress on the body. If you're repetitively going out all the time and like trashing your body and also training this high intensity, high volume program, it may not go well. But if you're doing all the other things right and you're actually recovering properly, like your resilience to stress, I think goes through the roof. I think that you can really handle a lot more volume and a lot more intensity than an average person and an average athlete.
Yeah, I think that goes. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point because I feel like where a lot of systems fail is that they're not high volume, they're not high velocity.
Yep.
Right? They don't stress the body enough to actually create a stimulus that athlete has to respond to.
Yep. And you can totally break people with these programs. Yeah. High intensity, high volume. Right. If you're not in a good place, you're gonna break down.
Yeah.
You're gonna break down.
So like one of the main arguments against super maximal training, right, in like eccentrics and ISO, right? I know the ISOs are now sort of overcoming ISOs instead of yielding ISOs, but either way, with the super maximal eccentrics, a main claim I've heard from many coaches is that's dangerous. You're putting the athlete at risk. And like you said, if you're not doing the right stuff outside of the weight room, but it's like if you want to create, responses in tissue, if you want to remodel tissue, make it stronger, make it more resilient, you have to tear it apart. You have to break it.
You really do have to provide a stress that it's going to want to do that,
Mm-hmm. You were saying even in isometric, eccentric, you had athletes getting sick. Like physically sick from a program.
Yep. It happens. And I think that could be, I know, again, you always got to ride the line because like sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's just like the body getting rid of a bunch of junk, Because that's something that like my parents are both chiropractors. I grew up with like the mindset kind of if your body when you get sick is like it's kind of like not like a warning sign, but it's like, all right, we're a little bit under. Like I do think that like if you're in a really good place, like in a health side of things, like you're going to be very resilient to like illness and disease. That's why I feel like the healthiest people I know like don't get sick that often. But I think that when you do get sick, sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's just it's kind of a real reset on the body. And like you should treat it as that. Like when you're sick, like don't try to you can try to train through sickness, but like if you're real beat, let your body get rid of that. Let your body, take that time to like let your body recover a little bit because I don't know, it will get to you. Those things build up, I think. So
yeah, one thing you brought up talking about this like extreme stress, and we talked about this the other day about with baseball, about how there's this huge injury epidemic now with pitchers just getting hurt. And I think the new with the pitch clock kind of matches directly with how we're training.
Yep.
Short rest, high intensity. But I think one thing, and you and I both agreed on this, is that it just exposed people not training correctly.
Yep.
There's 100%. No reason you should be performing a high velocity, high neurological rate activity like throwing a baseball over and over again and getting hurt.
Yep.
if you look, like, there's all this research about the valgus on an elbow. Basically, I think it's 6 to 8 times over on, I think, an 82, 84-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yep.
So you're supposed to be tearing it 6 to 8 times over, but you don't. And so why now all of a sudden that we put a time restriction on it, now we're seeing injury? It's not because, they weren't in shape to throw hard. They just weren't in shape to repeat that.
Right.
And so it's now all the guys who are healthy still and haven't had major injuries, I'd be willing, maybe they're genetic freaks, but also I'd be willing to bet if you look at their training, they're running a high volume program.
Yep.
Maybe it's not triphasic, maybe it's something else, but they're preparing their body to repeat something, and they're preparing for the actual stress of their sport.
Yep.
And so, like, talking about high velocity, I think in other sports too, that seems to be a huge factor of injury or getting hurt in other sports, is just not being adequately prepared for the demands of a season.
Yeah.
When I was with Zach for baseball, he said that the most common time you're going to see injuries are the first 2 weeks of the season, because you're going to have a higher hormonal, your hormones are going to be through the roof. Physically, you're going to about to play a game now at about 105% of an average game. And so with him, he would prepare them to handle those demands. Because if you can prepare someone to handle the demands of a really high, hormonal response, emotional response, neurological response, you're going to be fine moving forwards. And then with triphasic too, what do you think about the hormonal adaptations from it that you get from running such like a high density, like you're literally squeezing on the tendons for up to 10 seconds? Like, the body's going to have some sort of reaction to that.
Yeah.
So what do you think that has to do with, the program working as well as it does?
You're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong on some of these, but I do believe that there is, again, we're providing very specific stress with each training block, and you will get very different hormonal responses from those. So like what we see in like our strength blocks is not going to be the same as what we see in our speed blocks. But again, I think that all these things build on each other. So the hormonal responses you're getting from your eccentrics and your isos are essentially building blocks for what you're going to be seeing in power and speed to help make sure that you're in a good place to accept that training, like that training stimulus, But I think that, in terms of like our heavy eccentrics and stuff, I want to say like the growth hormone response is off the charts, because you're just breaking apart tissue, and like, and again, you want to be in a state that you're able to accept that training. So like hopefully you're in a place like aerobically that you're able to recover properly between bouts on that. And I feel like that's what kind of comes back to like the sickness thing that you were talking about before, is like, if you weren't prepared to like take that, I would say you're probably more likely to get a little bit sick, because your system is down. Your system has just got rocked by heavy eccentrics, and you weren't adequately prepared to recover from those things. But yeah, I don't know. I think like talk a little bit on your guys' end on that. What do you guys think for the hormonal responses on each block? Do you guys think they're pretty different as well?
Absolutely.
100%. I mean, just,
it's not like, especially in eccentrics or ISO.
Yep.
There's no stressor that's going to make you feel more beat up than doing a super maximal eccentric or an overcoming ISO. We were talking about it this morning. If you truly do a 10-second overcoming ISO and you put as much as you can into that, you're going to feel like you're going to pass out.
Yeah. We even have a video of us almost passing out, both of us.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. And those blood pressure response, that's completely different from something that's going to happen in speed. And there are a lot of coaches that they want to keep all these qualities in a week, and we've even talked about this with doing that with athletes in season, or you've talked about with certain rehab protocols doing eccentrics one day, isos another day, power, or just mixing up these stimuli. And I think the neural response is just going to be completely different. And that, I guess, one question I have for you is, how do you know like what's next? How do you know what an athlete needs? Because that's definitely a part of like what makes triphasic special with the 10-20 model. That's something that DB Hammer did. Neurotyping athletes, whether they need whether they're rate dominant, they need duration, right? Whether they're duration dominant, they might need rate. What's ever going to raise the middle? What's ever going to raise the magnitude? And maybe that's why Cal likes putting people in power when he doesn't really know. Like, hey, power is a good default, because we're going to raise the middle. Like, that's an important thing. So using the 10-20 model, besides that, like in season, I would always ask you, like, what are we doing next week? And you'd be like, well, I don't really know. There's these three options, but can you maybe talk us through the thought process in season?
In season, I think in season is very dependent on your competition schedule, and like, but I would say if we're at the U, we're training still. As much as like we want to win that national championship at the end of the season, it's like we also want to see if possible, every single one of our athletes go to the next level. Like that's ultimately the goal, and we understand that like in the college setting, like we were still developing them as athletes. So like to not train them during the season would be not good for their careers. You know, we need to continue to push them in a way that like we will still see adaptations in their ability to play hockey.
That is such a good point. I mean, there are so many coaches that almost take in-season training off, where they go, all right, we're just going to
detrain them. Yeah.
They detrain them.
Yeah.
We were talking about this the other day. Like if there's a difference between getting better in season and like peaking in season.
Yep.
Like if you peak in season, you just took the fall off.
Yep.
You just took that entire fall and decided to not make them as good as they can be. So you can either post for social media or say, hey, my athlete got stronger in season,
Yep.
or my athlete PR'd in season. And so it's like,
and we talked about this in the roundtable, right? If you're PRing, if you're hitting your PR in season, you are not training hard enough in the off season.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how some coaches can PR in season. It's like that wasn't your time to push those outputs.
Right.
Like,
right.
And that was your time to retain those.
And
outputs.
I think that it depends on. I think that if they're getting better at their, it's hard. You know, I agree with that to some extent, but I do still think that like, if you were training them properly and you do that, that's mine, and you do the little deload.
Put the sin on.
There you go. I got you.
I still do think that if you're getting to the end of the season, you've been training them properly, stressing them adequately, and you do like try to peak them at the end. I don't think you need to pull. You know, when you don't need to pull back for that long.
No, I don't think meaning at the end. I'm thinking like coaches who in the middle of their season will post, hey, I had 10 athletes PR.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's the peaking at the end of the season is great. That means that you're. I'm sorry, I should rephrase that. Depending on when you peak, exactly, you wave load them. If you're PRing in the middle of the season, you've now done this to the beginning of the season, and no matter what you do, the second half of the season is going to go down.
Yeah, I agree. I 100%
Versus
agree with that.
peaking at the end of the season is different. That means that your in-season program was correct in terms of workload and stress management, so that they come out essentially where they finished the fall or slightly above.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion on it.
I agree with that.
I mean, but still, like. And I think by getting better in season, it's maintaining the quality that you wanted to get in the off season, and keep maintaining or improving that specific quality.
Yep.
I
agree. But yeah, I think that if you're training them properly, once you do get to that time of the year where you're like, oh, we want them to be their best right now, it's like you just need to pull back a little bit.
Just pull back.
Mm-hmm. You just need to pull back a little bit because like they've been trained to do so much, and then if you just pull back like 25. 30%, 40%, like that is workload off their body that they've been experiencing for the past year, and now they will be able, that will give them the extra juice for that month of playoffs or month and a half or whatever that you need it for, or because I mean for hockey it's like depends on what you need to do. Like if you need to win your conference to make it to the next level, to make it to the next play, like you're probably gonna want to have to peak them there because they need that to get there, But with the Gophers this last year, like we were pretty much got a buy-in on the national tournament, so like we were even like training pretty good up until like the quarterfinals, of our conference, and then we got into the speed circuit and we were doing the download stuff, and then obviously we lost still, so training can only do so much. Right. You gotta win games.
Yeah, I mean,
you gotta win games.
Gotta win games. You can't throw Sam Lee on the ice.
Right. I did love the in-season training though.
Yeah.
One thing that surprised me a lot was the strength default was ISO.
Yep.
Power was always in there.
Yep. You were only there for the first half.
I was, yeah. I didn't see the second half.
That was basically the first half. Was a lot of ISOs, a lot of power. Yeah, fair amount of ISOs, a lot of power. Yeah. Trickled speed in there, maybe for a big weekend or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then the second half was like trickling. We started back with ISOs right away. We did GPP mid-season because we get like a month off. We did GPP for a couple of weeks.
And what'd you do for that? Big 80?
Yep.
Mito? What was it?
Kind of a variety like that. Right, but we did Big 80 circuit. We did some duration ISOs, mitochondrial density, and then some super endurance, contralateral circuit. We kind of let it be a little open. We just made sure that they weren't like doing a lot of jumping and sprinting. And we were doing mainly aerobic work just before getting back into going into like our main programs. And then we hit ISOs, and then the rest of the season was pretty much power or speed, and like I would say predominantly speed. So like, yeah, that was kind of cool to see, kind of Cal's thought process on that, because he was just like, we're still training hard here, and we're still training hard here, but like we're gonna be, we're majority power ISO here, and we're majority power speed towards the end of the season.
Cool.
Because it's, again, team setting, like probably you're not necessarily addressing like the actual needs of the athlete, I guess, at that point, but you're addressing it kind of as a team. You're kind of viewing the team as a whole and being like, okay, what do we need to be going forward at this point, you know. But yeah, I mean, from an off-season standpoint, like we do use that 10-20 model to try to make decisions as to like what we think they need. But no matter what, everyone's going to be hitting, you know, a little bit of GPP at least. A lot of times people come to us with like their couple weeks off and they were already doing a lot of like lower intensity training. So, but it depends on that. But after they get back, it's for sure going to be eccentrics, isos, power, and then we can test them, kind of see at that point like where are you at. You know, if they need speed, then we take it to there. But like early in the off season, like we definitely get them with the power and we just kind of decide off the 10-20 model and see what they need. And then after they do that a couple times, again, if they kind of get stuck in an area where it's like, okay, you've been put in power 4 times in a row, like, or 3 times in a row, we're gonna move you. We're gonna try. Yeah, we're gonna be like, we gotta say, like, again, based on what we're seeing on their sprints, based on how they're moving, we'll be like, all right, let's do this for a couple weeks and just retest you and see where you go from there.
Right. How about somebody on a shorter time duration? So that'd be like, okay, 6 weeks eccentric, ISO, power, test, see what they need. How about somebody on like a 4-week time frame? I remember that tennis pro came in. She only had 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Well, she came in. She came
ISO
in a little
power.
injured. So that was why we kind of went into isos with her right away. Might have been a little bit different, but I don't know. I think
explain that thought process.
She had a shoulder thing, so we put her in isos because it was, you know, you don't have any velocity there. And the other thing too with triphasic programming is like I wouldn't necessarily like to put a new athlete right into power, just because like it is a lot. Like that's our fast eccentrics, fast heavy eccentrics. You know, it's like that is a lot to handle on, you know, all your tissues in your body. So like I would like to always put them in through a cycle of like. I preferably eccentrics and then isos just to really prep the tissue for that, because you still did some jumping and some sprinting in there, but it's a little heavier loaded and it's not. And we a lot of times pause the plyos in our strength blocks, but anyways, yeah. So I wouldn't usually prefer to throw someone right into power if they've never done a triphasic training program before, just because I just don't think they'd be ready for it unless you're just a freak. Then you're fine. But like you always got those people too. But like you're getting a new athlete coming in, like, you know, freshman, 18 years old, a few years of a training age, and you just kind of look at him and you're like, oh yeah, this, you know, we got to prep you first, you know.
You got to pick up the fork for a little bit.
Yeah, we got to prep you before I throw you into these heavy eccentrics, heavy fast eccentrics, you know. But yeah, isos for just because it's the stress of those Cubans and, you know, rebounds and impulses on that shoulder that was already hurt. This wasn't going to be good. So we let her do 2 weeks of isos on that first. Got her from like, you know, she was saying like a 7 or 8 out of 10 pain down to like nothing, 1, 2. She was also seeing Jimmy Olsen over this time too. Between those two things, and then we got her into 2 weeks of power and she was feeling good and we sent her off. And that was it. We had 4 weeks to kind of like rehab her, if you will. And so we did. And she's been fine since.
Great.
So, yep.
You were talking about using isos for strength. And one thing that we were all talking about this yesterday is, you know, is Surin's training of residuals. You know, where, you know, I'm going to butcher this, but I think strength is either 20 plus or minus 5, or it's like 17 plus or minus 3, or it's around the 15 to 23-ish mark for strength. And I know that when you were talking with Padula, he had said that if he doesn't feel like if he doesn't lift heavy for like a week or 2 weeks, he starts feeling weak. And I feel the same way. If I don't touch something heavy for, you know, about 2 weeks, I feel weak. I mean, I might test, I might be 5% under, you know, if I test it. But is that taken into account, you know, with triphasic, these residuals?
Yeah, it is. It is taken into account. I think that in terms of GPP, like we only hit that with our athletes like 2 or 3 times a year. But at the same time, like our program, there's still a large aerobic component to it, you know, and so So it's like as much as like it's more like the weeks that we do GPP are more of like an offload, you know. It's like we are doing it for the GPP side of things, but it's more for just like a body reset, you know, like take away all the hard stuff that you've been doing for the past 6 months or 4 months or whatever it is, and just let you do some light aerobic work, do some long duration isos, like just like restorative stuff, you know. I think that's good for anybody to do, especially if you're pushing it for a long time, you know. And like I know people that just never take deloads and just continue to push, and that's fine, again, if you're in a good spot. But like I think after a long season, you're a little bit beat up, getting hit all the time. Like I think it's important to take 2 weeks off, take a few weeks off, where you're just kind of like really doing the body restorative work that you don't do when you're training hard.
Right. One thing that Jared had brought up here is that, and that you alluded to, is that the program is inherently a little bit aerobic, even though it's all usually under 10 seconds. When we're in eccentrics, isos, power and speed, it's usually all under 10 seconds. That is a foreign concept, and it really took me a long time to wrap my head around it, because training for time and not reps is something that a lot of coaches aren't really considering. You've made a lot of tweets about this. This is something that Cal has talked about a lot, where we're not going over 10 seconds because of the cortisol response, because when you start to get into more lactate type work, it starts to get really, really stressful on the body. It's maybe harder to recover. And some people look at the program and they go, oh my gosh, you have 30 exercises today. You're doing 30 exercises a day for 5 days. You're repeating that for months on end. It's like, that's such a foreign concept, because most coaches are going to program 9 exercises, 3 by 10, most of them, right? They're not going to occur in the same time frames. So can you speak to the amount of density and the amount of volume that are in some of these programs? How is it that you can be so metabolically fatigued, yet your outputs don't drop off by more than 2 to 3% in your sprints and your jumps? That's such a thing that it took me so long to wrap my head around. I look at the program, I'm like, we got A through Z here in the first block. This, I'm exaggerating, but
it's more like M or L.
Because if you don't experience it, and we've had coaches work out with us at Springfield. Carter Hohen came down, did the workouts, didn't drop off sprints or jumps.
And these are guys that haven't been doing the program at all.
Just came in,
Carter was in the middle of ISO with us, and then Springfield was power? It's power.
Dude, it's a repeat sprint ability program, and you're just repeating sprints in your training, and once you're training your body to do that, it's going to follow suit, again, if you're, fueling properly and doing all the other side stuff right. But I think that, again, you're using that aerobic system to recover like your main alactic system, right? Like that is your predominant system. You're working during the actual sets themselves, but the aerobic system is always kicking in the background, and I would even say to some extent the lactate system is too, right? Like it is still clearing lactate and using lactate as an energy source, but your predominant energy system is that alactic one, and these other 2 energy systems are helping recover that one.
I mean, they're all working. I remember, when I was in school, I think probably you too, and we were all taught that it's one than the other. So ATP, CP.
This one's on. These are off.
This is on. Once this one kicks on, the other one turns off, and then in your school, you're like, oh, okay. And then, you get out and you think about it, you're like, wait, how does that make sense? Like, when you're still gassed, you can still lift pretty heavy. You can still accelerate. You can still do all these things. And so I think that's something that the program takes into account, like being absolutely exhausted at the end of a lift, and we're ripping, bent knee prime times. And half the time Zach and I are like, oh, yeah, it's a PR. Or, yeah, it's still not dropping off. And I just don't understand why more coaches don't train like that. Because if you want to replicate, and this is a huge thing I want to talk about too, is replicating sport. A lot of coaches think you have to replicate sport in the weight room by chasing shapes. We have to simulate these same shapes we're going to see in sport in the weight room. Most of these are sport coaches, but there are a lot of strength coaches, that think along those same lines of that the weight room is, it's predominantly for maintaining and developing qualities. That's what it should be for, is to aid you in your sport. But a lot of coaches see that as, well, I'm going to create these same shapes that we see in sport. And so with the program and getting back to these energy systems, like sport is taking place, and most sports take place using all 3 energy systems at the same time. And you're basically relying on your oxidative phosphorylation system more so in a lot of sports, because you're breathing heavy in between, like football. You're breathing heavy in between, but you're still going to go and explode. So while you're relying on your oxidative system to recover your alactic system, your alactic system still has to go. And so now we can simulate that in training and simulate that with triphasic or the triphasic.
You're able to restore that immediate energy system at a better, more efficiently, I guess, faster, and you can get more of it back, hopefully, is the goal with your aerobic system as it's recovering it. And again, I think the programs train that perfectly. You do these high intensity bouts, you have some active recovery in there, you're walking from station to station. I think that again, moving from exercise to exercise, taking 20, 30 steps between your high intensity bouts, that is enough, almost. Obviously, if you win all day, you're going to start to drop off, as we know, but you can get through 4 or 5 sets, 3 blocks, and you're usually pretty fine. Again, at first, you first start training in the triphasic system, you start doing that, it's not going to be the case. but over again a couple months of that, you trained your body to handle that.
Right.
Like
I'd say what's more like football, what's more like basketball, right? What's more like hockey? You do 3 power cleans with 30 seconds of rest in between each rep because it's so neurologically taxing that you really have to lock in on each rep that you do.
Yep.
And maybe your French contrast set that takes 5 minutes just to do 4 exercises or whatever because you have to rest at the end. Or you're repeating 10 exercises. The assistance exercises are also really stressful because they're overcoming isometrics for your neck, your wrist, your ankle, right? So even your active recovery is stressful, right? When in a football game, you might have 10 seconds of rest in between each play. You might have up to 40, 45, maybe 60, maybe a few minutes, but like, what's more like sport?
Right. Yep.
No, I think that's how you simulate sport. You don't chase the shapes. You don't chase, the musculature you're going to use. You chase repeating bouts over and over and over again. Because if you even want, someone's going to make the argument of like, oh, well, in a sport like, football or, you need more hamstring, you need more quad, you really need to make sure your hips are good. Or a sport like baseball, you got to make sure the shoulder is good. It's like, well, what means it's bad then? What is bad? Bad is not being conditioned for your sport. We can condition your body to perform whatever it needs to do over and over again. That's way better than spending 15, writing 15 exercises in one lift just for your rotator cuff, or just focusing on the hips, for, half your lift, or just focusing on cleans. Like, that's what your lift is. It's like, well, it's great. It's not going to help you.
Right.
Man, 3 fly 10s with 5 minutes rest. I'm just telling all you coaches right now, 3 fly 10s with 5 minutes rest in between, that's only going to work for so long. Especially if you have a RSA type sport. Like, it works great for young athletes. I don't know if it would work too well with, these hockey players. I'm sure it could.
Not after doing what they've been doing.
No, because they've reached a certain level of physiological stress. It's going to take more to overcome that. If you want to push your outputs.
And at that point too, and the argument that the training's dangerous. At one point, you're so athletically advanced that it has to be dangerous. You're not going to get the same result. It has to be like
there's inherent risk. There's inherent risk to get the reward, right?
Yeah, and all these athletes that always complain about being sore. It's like, dude, you play a collegiate sport at the Division I level. Your body's not going to feel great. Like, and I used to be on the complete opposite end. Like, no, you guys are all stupid. My body should feel great all the time. It's like, well, yeah, if you want to sit on the bench every game, you don't want to play. Like, yeah, you're going to feel great. But if you're playing, you're getting consistent minutes, and you're playing, and you want to play this, whatever sport you do, past
you're going to be a little
banged up. You're going to be banged up. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. We just got to we got to keep you as healthy as we can. But, like, if you're getting a lot of minutes, you're taking a lot of hits, like, if you're really going hard, you're going to be a little banged up. There's going to be some things here and there that are going to be flared up, I think it's different, though, when, like, your dysfunction is coming from your training, Oh,
100%. You can't. Yeah.
That's like, all right, now you gotta fix that stuff. Like, you're not playing, and all you're doing is training hard, and you're all broken. Someone else is going on there.
Well, I think there's a difference between, and some strength coaches thinking that that the athlete's sport is the weight room versus their sport is actually what they do.
Yeah.
I think those are the coaches that get lost and, really mess people up in season and get them, create a training dysfunction versus, hey man, I just took 7 hits last game. I think that's where you get that separation.
Yeah, and one big thing that we do at the U2 with our athletes, like, for example, if they're running or jumping, like, there may be something that looks a little bit off with it, but then we don't always, like, tell them unless it's like, unless it is a quick verbal, quick tell them how they're jumping wrong, But if they're, like, running weird or doing something that, like, wouldn't be like textbook jumping or textbook running, like, we don't always tell them because we like the program and, like, doing, RPR or square one or whatever modalities you have to, like, fix those things. So there's, like, times where someone comes in and they're all types of wonky and, like, you could tell them 10 different things to try to get them to run better or sprint or jump better or whatever, but I don't think that's not going to fix, again, what's, how their brain is organizing that motor pattern. It's like you gotta let the training kind of take care of that. And yeah, to your point, I think that's where a lot of coaches mess things up, is because, like, again, you have this great athlete that they're throwing the leg weird, or they're like, their acceleration looks funky, and then you start telling them to do all these things, and then it's just like either covering up the problems or putting them in positions that are, like, not their best motor pattern, and then they just breaking them to some extent, pulling hamstrings or tearing different muscles or different muscle groups.
That's something I was so surprised about. I'm, like, watching people work out, and I would always go to you and be like, hey, do you want this athlete to do this exercise a certain way? And you'd always be like, nah, just, kind of let him do it. Let him
rip it.
Let him figure it out, right?
Let him rip
it. And if it looks so completely terrible that like you have to step in and say something, I mean, go say something. But the exercises are really, really set up for a less amount of coaching to be done, right?
Yes.
Whereas an Olympic lift, you have to have great coaching in order to make that a great exercise. And it takes years to develop great technique and great motor patterns in those very, very specific, highly skilled exercises. I don't think that makes Olympic lifting a bad exercise, but it gives the barrier of entry for something like triphasic training, where we're getting a higher eccentric RFD on a banded hex bar drop jump than an Olympic lift, and I don't have to teach an athlete how to do a banded hex bar drop jump. Go in there and rip it. You know? Like even Jared, your first few weeks of doing this, it looks so crisp, so clean. Can you speak to maybe how you feel doing some of these exercises now? I mean, you pretty much mastered them at this point. Like,
I mean, honestly, like the first week or two, you're kind of like a deer in the headlights. I mean, honestly. For someone who's never done that type of training before, I mean, the first 2 weeks, you're like, what's going on? But, I mean, I think I only asked you maybe like how do I set this up? And then it's just go from there, because it just kind of makes sense. But, I mean, now, it's super easy. I mean, it really doesn't. The barrier of entry is so low. Like, it's so low. Like, if you know how to set up the exercise, you can do it. And even then, like, you get better by doing it more. Like, you don't get better by doing something else or doing a mobility exercise to get you in the right position. You get better just from doing it more, which is.
And again, like some of our best athletes are the ones that look the worst in the weight room. You know, it's like. And it's
like, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the weight room doesn't.
They feel great, and they're making it happen on the field or the ice or the court or whatever. It's
that's
like.
what matters.
I'm like, I ain't telling you how to sprint. Like, you know, like your body likes that for some reason, you know, whether I think it's wrong or not, but it's the fastest way you can do it, and it's not breaking you down, so let's ride.
Was something, that's something I wanted to ask you. The DPPCs. Zach and I have noticed every time we skip those, our numbers are down every single set. Why?
It's just like, why? It's literally just like, it's the same premise as like RPR and square one, trying to get your patterns correct. And it's just another layer of doing that. You know, it's like a mechanical, instead of relying on these lymphatic spots or these, neurological triggers, clearing these neurological triggers. It's like, it is a mechanical, like punching, pulling motion, getting making sure that the contraction of the sling is proper, it like puts you in that space. I would say it's like the mechanical version of doing like a manual RPR or clearing a trigger like that, you know? So there's just another layer of it. This is another layer of trying to clear patterns, you know?
The DPPCs and the anterior-posterior cycling of the exercises, I really do think that for coaches out there that are watching this right now, that might be the one thing. Like, if you don't do RPR, if you don't do square one, it might be okay. Like, you're still going to probably get really good results. But if you just do the DPPCs and the anterior-posterior cycling of exercises, for just an example for the ones out there, you do a squat, and then you do like a RDL, right? Those combo really, really well, right? I mean, everybody's already mixing pushes and pulls, but do that with everything, and you can do more, higher volume, not drop off as fast, and it's just the order and all these little things that are in the program. If you omit, certain exercises, I've had this discussion with a lot of coaches. They're like, oh, I don't do Yuri's. It's like, well, test it. Test it with a lot of athletes. If you skip it, you might see that you're not going to be as fast that day. It's weird. It's really weird.
I've noticed that too with the ACL propulsion as well. That's another one. That's another big one where if I don't do that, my sprints suck. Like,
it's strange.
It's like just matching. Like, there's always an exercise in a performance pattern cycle that is going to like almost simulate what your transfer is going to be. So like when you do your start sprint or your sprint start from half kneeling, falling knee, whatever you want to do. Usually we precede that with like our start propulsion band pull, because that's like you're matching shin angles, you're matching torso angles, you're matching the musculature that you're about to sprint with. There is always one of those, and like it's like kind of a contrast to an extent, right? But like for it's like a bent knee prime time. Doing a Yuri directly before that is going to be highly conducive to you to be able to, strike the ground hard and push ground behind you in a prime time. It's literally the same motor pattern, just a little bit slower. The velocity is a little bit slower, but you can put a little more oomph into it. And then once you go sprint with it, if you're doing a bodyweight one, then you can really rip it. You can feel the difference right away. And I just think that has to do with like the proximity of those, like the proximity of the motor pattern you just did to the one you want to do. It's the same idea as like French contrast, you know, it's like, or contrast training in general. It's like you will get a potentiation effect if you do an accelerated version of a similar motor pattern or a super heavily loaded version of a motor pattern. You know?
I've had a lot of coaches, both podcasts that I did with like Locke and Reed and Joe Padula, they had talked about that the band accelerated jumps are something that they don't really program or they don't really like that much because it takes, you know, weight, it takes a form of stress, force maybe off of the movement itself. Can you speak to why there's so many band accelerated jumps? I mean, they're probably 3 days a week.
I would agree with that. They're junk if you don't have a good intent. Like, you need to be purposefully striking the ground hard and trying to jump through the ground.
Okay.
Because if you're not doing that, like, you're not utilizing the stretch reflex to its fullest extent. You're not taking advantage of the fact that you do have bands around you. If you're just going down and absorbing and setting yourself back up, it's not. Yeah, I agree. It's just taking load off your body. You know, it's like it's more of an intent thing. I'd rather see you do a body weight jump where you're really trying to strike the ground and jump high, rather than an accelerated jump where you're not doing that.
Yeah. And so the bands, especially the double band accel jumps, there are bands pulling you down, there are bands pulling you up. A bunch of coaches are going to look at that and say, okay, that's taking weight off of the movement in maybe both directions. It doesn't really make sense to band a movement in both directions. But isn't it more about reducing the ground contact time? But isn't it about getting more reps in less time?
That exercise on itself looks like it's the dumbest thing in the world, but what you don't see is how that jump is progressed and regressed across the blocks, you know? Because when you see that jump done in strength, we're pausing it at the bottom. Or we're doing the single leg version, where you're doing the same thing, jumping from side to side. So again, if you're doing a single leg versus a double leg jump, you're going to have, you know, increased load on that limb that's hitting the ground, because it's only one of them, and it's going to take some more time to get off the ground again, you know? And then you go to power, and you got some bands pulling you down and pulling you up, and then in speed, you just have bands pulling you up. So, like, you can see the, you know, again, you walk in, you see that one jump happening. It's like, yeah, this is probably a dumb exercise, and I would agree. It's a dumb exercise if you have nothing around it and no. If
you did that alone, it wouldn't do.
Yeah, if you just like, oh yeah, we're gonna do these accelerated jumps, you know, it's like, okay, why are we just doing accelerated jumps, you know? And then it's like, okay, but like, where do these fit in? Is the real question, you know? Where can we do these, you know, in the program? And maybe at your certain gym setup, like, maybe the double banded one is like, you don't even need that, honestly. You know, maybe in strength you got one band pulling you up, and then in power you got two bands pulling you up, and then in strength you got three bands pulling you up, you know. I think that, like, you know, just somehow staggering out, like, it's essentially the same jump over and over again. It's just like the way we set it up, it makes it different. It makes the stimulus a little bit different on the body.
You know, it's like a coach complaining about a squat. It's like not loading up a squat, or like box squats versus full depth squats. You make the same argument for that. Oh, you're not getting full depth. Oh, you're not, you know. It's easier. You know, it's easier because there's a box there now. It's like, again, it's a whole purpose around it.
Right.
I think that's with everything in the program. If you
in context,
context is always going to be king. Like if you came in and you watched 3 exercises of, honestly, any block in any of the triphasic training cycles, you'd probably be thinking, this is stupid. Like if you just watch the exercises, like if you watch if you watch someone do, you know, like right now, you watch someone do an ACELs or a overspeed sprint, and you watch them go push their head into a wall for 7 seconds, and then you go watch them do wrist pro suit for 7 seconds, you're going to be like, this doesn't make any sense. Exactly. Then you realize that, oh, okay, we're actually getting some stress off right now. We're making sure the other patterns are good. Okay, now it makes sense.
Right.
That's with anything. Like, context is always going to be king.
Yeah, like once I started doing more triphasic stuff, I was like, yeah, this stuff looks really dumb. But then I started thinking like, oh, I see all these Instagram people doing all this really dumb stuff. You know, maybe I just don't have enough context to realize what they're doing is actually not that dumb.
Well, you don't know how dumb you look until you do it in a public gym where other people are looking at you going, what the hell are these clowns doing over here? Breaking cable stacks and out here just getting random people old.
Yeah, I don't know.
People mad at us. And
I feel like with I don't know. There's a lot of like, I guess, animosity in the strength and conditioning field. It's like, oh, my shit's right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong. It's like a lot of things can fit in a lot of places. It's just a matter of like, for your specific gym or for your specific athlete, like, is this a feasible thing to do with them? You know, and it's going to look very different from gym to gym. But like that's why it's like sometimes like, and like again, I've written programs that like you look at it from afar, and then you look at like the classic triphasic programs we run at the U, and it's like, these don't look the same at all, but it's like I had to work with what I got, you know. So like, you know, you guys are doing the triphasic and crunch right now. Like I've written a commercial gym triphasic and I just set it up differently, you know.
Yeah.
What I'll do is like I did this for my brother, and I I basically have a performance cycle block in itself where it's like for like an eccentric block. It's like not you don't do all like the jumps and stuff with your eccentric stress because it's like just not feasibly possible. Like I'm using a 2 up 1 down leg press for my eccentric, because he's at a commercial gym. Like he doesn't have spotters. He doesn't have these fancy safety arms that can like make sure that he's not going to get crushed under as much load as he can take. But like if you do a 2 up 1 down leg press, you're providing that a very similar tissue stress on the body. You might not be getting the same like hormonal response that you'd get with loading the entire system with weight, but like I'm getting the stress I want, like a local tissue response that I want out of that with the 2 up 1 down. But I can't have him do that and then kind of like what you guys are saying, the struggle of having to go across the gym and then do your jumps. He's one person without a 1080 at crunch. That he's not going to be that guy running around the gym.
Yeah.
I feel like most athletes like don't like, that's a complaint that I get from some of the athletes. Like they look at the program like I can't do this on my own. So like somehow maybe writing it in a way that they can get a similar stress in a commercial gym without having all the fancy stuff.
I think that's a great point. And you talk about the leg press, like I think machines have been demonized for if you want to look back at like the history of machines in colleges and see like the Big Ten, what was it, the 80s and 90s, like all machines, like those guys look like Greek gods.
Yep.
And they go to the NFL and they would suck because they just rip machines all day because you're not going to get anywhere athletically. But to your point, machines are a great substitute for either, like you said, local tissue or like jumper's knee. If you got an issue,
so stable.
It's so stable, and I think that's something that a lot of people need to get out of their heads of like you don't always have to fight for stability.
Yeah.
Why do we like? There's so many coaches that are like, oh, you have to make the exercise. I mean, this is where we get the Bosu ball from, or this is where we get all this other stuff. It's like, why do we need to
challenge?
Why do we need to challenge dynamic stability? They already play a sport. They're already moving around enough in their sport. Why don't we just support the qualities that they're going to see? Yeah. And then, so that's my little rant about machines.
Right.
Love machines.
I think machines are great,
like knee flexion, knee extension machines, but Mito.
Yeah, Mito. I've written Mito for.
Oh, dude, when we ripped Mito, dude,
it feels great.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's nothing better.
But then, you made another point. Oh, the other point you made about, being able to switch up your program.
Yep.
And it's something that you and I had talked about. I think us a little too. That we're all still so young at this point where we don't have an ego attached to the way we think.
Yep.
And I think that's a big problem in this industry is a lot of coaches who have been doing this. Now, granted, not a lot. There are some fantastic coaches out there that have been in this thing for 40 years that are fantastic coaches that are always trying to figure out what to do next. But there are a lot of coaches that attach their identity to a specific thing. Like, I do this, therefore everything that's not this is bad.
Yep.
And I think that, we're all lucky enough to have had really good mentors who've taught us to critically think about things and especially to say, okay, is this the best thing right now? What else is out there that can work? And I think, you and I talk about this all the time, that if there's something better than triphasic training system, something better than Square One and better than RPR, we're going to abandon ship and hop on that. Because if you're not doing the best thing possible out there, then why, at least for me, and I know you think this way too, like why do it? Like, if you're not going to do the best thing out there, why do it? And so I think,
But your options are always limited based on your situation.
Exactly. Like everything's.
If you have it all, money's not an issue. You got all the time and all the space and all the machines and all the fancy tools. It's like, you have a lot more options than if you got some bare bones gym with just a barbell and some dumbbells.
Right. Or a boss that walks in and goes, "Why aren't we cleaning today?"
Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Like
we're gonna have to.
You might have to mix in some.
Or the sport coach that comes in and goes, "Yeah, we're gonna clean." You're like, all right, sick, dude.
Yeah, like it's okay, fine.
Or heavy back squats.
Yeah,
like,
throw them in, whatever. Do what you need to do.
Do it,
I think back squat works fine.
Well, there's no exercise. Like you were on Instagram and you said like, what's your favorite exercise of all time? Barbell back squat.
Barbell back squat, and I don't barbell back squat anymore. I love it.
There's no exercise that's inherently bad. It's just how it's programmed.
Right.
That's how you make an exercise bad. You can make a bench press bad. You can make a lat pull down bad. You can even make a sprint bad if you program it at the wrong time and in the wrong setting.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I think we focus way too much on exercises, not necessarily all the other things that are so much more important.
Right. Like would I rather put my brother under, a single leg split squat, like Hatfield safety bar thing? Like, yeah, I would. But like, if I send him to a commercial gym with that, like, he's gonna get crushed. Like, I'm not gonna set him up. I'm not gonna set him up for failure. Like it's just no. You gotta modify what you need, and like, and something that I've realized too with like, is I'd rather have an athlete doing a subpar program that they're 100% bought in than like an
compliance.
optimal program that like they don't give a shit about, you know.
Right.
Like if they're gonna try hard on something that's like not perfect in my eyes, you know, as long as it's not messing them up, like I'm with that. Like let's go hard, you know.
Right. And I think
within means, obviously.
Right.
If it's just dumb stuff, it's like, okay, no, like we're not doing that. But like if they love hang cleaning, like, all right, like let's ride, you know. Like if you're good with it, I think it is like helping you. I can mix those in. I can definitely get that in as like a main exercise.
For sure, yeah. And as a coach, you kind of have to be flexible. And I mean, we are in the private sector now.
Yep.
So we need to be able to keep clients healthy and happy and performing their best.
Yep.
So if they want to do our stuff and they're attracted to the RSA type triphasic training type model, good, right? If you want to maybe do some of your own stuff in there, we can find a way, you know, that's always.
And if we had talked about like kids are like our main, whether we like it or not, our main, and I mean, I don't mind athletes are athletes, but if our main group are going to be 14 to 18 year olds, high school kids, every single high school athlete on the planet wants big biceps. Every single one. I don't care who you are. If you're telling yourself you don't, you're lying. We're all in high school. We all want to be jacked. And so like that's something that we're going to have to figure out to add to our program. Is our high school kids are going to come in and be like, yeah, I want to be big. You want to be better at your sport? Nah, I just want to be big. All right.
Throw a little arm farm on Friday.
Yeah, throw in some arm farm.
Feed.
Like compliance, like you're saying,
dogs,
compliance is everything. Like if they're not going to do the program,
Give them some high quality arms. What do you mean? Don't throw it at the end. Give them some, you know, Monday.
Right at the beginning.
Monday morning.
Monday, smoke the heaviest 3 sets of biceps and triceps that you can, and then start all your other stuff. They'll actually do that. I think that would actually work pretty well. Not optimal.
Not optimal.
But if you put that that initial juice right into those biceps and triceps before your week starts, like
I mean, if they come in on Monday, they know they're crushing arms. They're gonna be filling out the sleeves the rest of the week. They're gonna be swollen for a couple days.
Throw in a set of biceps after your goat drill, like and then let them sprint. Like it's not gonna destroy their top velocity sprint. It's not ideal, but like you know, if they can get some jacked arms out of it, screw it. Whatever.
I would like to see how that
add
would
in
go.
high quality
the
arms
would probably be
through the roof.
Insane with that.
Hey man,
right?
you can do bicep curls before you sprint. Oh hell yeah.
Add in high quality biceps before you do high quality sprints. It'll be
fucking ice cream for breakfast right there. Yeah,
that's great.
We're going right away.
They'd love that
part of the day,
stuff.
we're getting big arms. Yeah.
They'd love that.
But yeah, I mean, can you talk a little more about compliance? Because I think that's a huge thing. I know you already talked about it, but like that is so big. Is having an athlete actually like you can get someone better by doing push-ups, air squats, and some jumps. Then you can have someone running. You write the best program ever, and they do it once a week.
No, I mean it's just that like you got to be on the same page with them. I feel you got to be talking with them, making sure they feel like their needs are being met. You know. But I think it is just different, again, based on the situation you're in. Like, at the U, like, we don't usually, they don't have a say, like, we're training hard, like, we're trying to get you to the next level, like, we've calculated the things out the way that we want it for that weight room, and, like, you're doing this, but, like, I also personal train on the side, and, like, I cannot approach those in that same manner, like, I need to be listening to their feedback, like, no matter what, and, like, not that we don't listen to our athletes' feedback, because we do, and we will modify things if needed. But at the same time, we're like, we want you doing this exercise because we tested this, and this is the best thing that we can do for you right now. And again, like, they got a problem with it, something's not right with the exercise, we'll make the adjustment. But, like, if someone asks for a hang clean, like, that's not going to fly. Whereas, like, with my personal training clients, if somebody wants to do a clean or an Olympic lift variation, I'm like, all right, yeah, let's get you good at these.
You're telling me you're not giving middle-aged moms triphasic? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I make them run.
You're going to sprint.
You're going to sprint.
Yeah. The ones that are about it, I make them do some sprints. Yeah.
Good.
There we go.
Yeah, I make them. I'm like, this is the best thing you can do for yourself.
Hey,
that's what I always tell people. I'm like, they're like, oh, I want to get abs. I'm like, you want to get abs? Start sprinting a lot. You'll get abs.
You'll get it. Yeah.
As long as you're not fat, like, you like start sprinting a bunch, and then do sure mix in your shitty ab movements in there too. But like, you start sprinting pretty good. Yeah, you're gonna get some abs.
Right? Because like, what's a better core movement?
Dude,
when your legs slammed into the ground. And
at 5 times your body weight.
Yeah, 400, 500 to 1,000 pounds of force, whatever it is, right? Going through your fucking midsection, all these different slings that you got.
I get
like
crazy
sprinting.
sore. I get crazy sore.
Dude, I remember, I mean, after the first time we did, what was it, prone psoas?
Yeah, the core fist raise.
After we started doing that and we sprinted, dude, I've never been that sore in my core after sprinting, ever.
Yep. Yeah.
Might I say this? Revolutions in speed training too. I am very excited to hear what Chris Cordes has to say. That guy.
That dude's a savage, man.
That dude is a savage.
That dude is a savage.
Dude's gonna come in. Oh, you're not sprinting right, bud. Let me watch you take a couple steps here. Sorry, Chris. I never met you, but I've heard you talk a lot.
Funny story. We were filming for RPR2, and I was I was laying on the table, just like, waiting for the next video to start, and I just feel Chris digging up, like just feeling up my erectors, up my back. I'm like, oh God, this guy's gonna send one into me right now. He didn't.
He can give you a zinger.
He didn't, but yeah, no, it was pretty funny. I was like, this guy is just he's just looking for something to just absolutely pierce right now.
Just right that quad spot. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So that was one thing too that I think is really interesting about RPR is, like, yes, there's a neurological, but there's also a like a mechanical aspect to it as well.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. Like, we've found a lot of different ways to do RPR, through Square One.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that doing it the way that we found, and because obviously if you do it the way we found, you test, it passes. So it's passing the RPR test, but I felt so much better actually, digging into those spots.
Yes.
Like mechanically, like getting in there.
Yep.
There's a huge there's some difference between doing that and then just trying to attack the neural aspect of it.
Yep. Yeah. No, I 100% agree.
It's the same thing in Square One when you have someone perform the ISO themselves. There seems to be more of a mechanical response as well.
Yep.
And same thing with this new thing that Sean found with the superior clear, where it's like there seems to be a mechanical aspect to it that just makes it a little bit better.
Yep. I 100% agree. Like, I think that if you have it's different when you have like delayed onset muscle soreness, or like you sprinted for the first time in a few weeks and you're a little extra sore from it, and you got some tissues that are a little bit tight and whatnot. But like, I think that if in general, like if you're pressing around on your all these muscles in your body and all these different like slings and insertions and origins, like you shouldn't have this crazy stress response right away. Like if someone just gently like pokes you in your side, you shouldn't do like the jumper cable thing,
right.
or like start laughing. Yeah, right. Like I do think that there is something there where it's like your tissue should be able to be like pressed on, even like hit to an extent, and you don't have, and then have a not negative neural response.
Well, especially
I mean, Jared and I have talked about like we're gonna use RPR as a warm up.
Yep.
Because of like everything that we've noticed with our workouts. I mean, it's like the only...
Dude, it's a minute. It's a minute.
Yep.
And the only hamstring problem I've had is trying to race a bunch of drunk guys on the beach for a beer without warming up. Like, it's doing RPR, and you've been at the U of M for a year and a half now, maybe a little more. What can you speak to about using it as a warm-up and using it, the intra-set model? Because I think that also, there's a big thing to that. I don't know if it's the neural lymphatic side. I don't know if it's the neural side. I think
it's both.
like you are saying, there is a mechanical aspect of it that is flushing metabolic byproducts and might increase your ability to repeat explosive bouts. But as a warm-up, like, these athletes are not really that injured. I mean, if it is, it's contact injuries, right? It's like getting hit weird or something.
It's not soft tissue happening in the weight room, but I think part of it is they're also all 18 to 23 years old. They're all like young guys and girls that are high level athletes. So like when we do get some of our older pros and coming in, like they'll do a couple dynamic stretches before getting going, a couple skips, just some stuff to make sure. Honestly, what I think that is more than anything is just like a quick check. Like they know that if there's certain if they know like these certain movements every time they do them, if those movements feel good, then they know they're good to go. Then fucking do those arm swings, whatever. Do a couple arm swings, make sure you're feeling good, or do a couple skips, make sure everything's feeling good. And like, but again, like I think those are just more checks on their body than anything. That's their time to be like, okay, hips feels a little bit weird. I need someone to get in there and try to get the tissue to release, or give me a hip pull, or do some Square One, or maybe they know what they need to do for it already and they just quickly do a couple breaths even to help clear it, whatever it is.
So that's something too, like with the goat drill. I've been starting off as like my check-in is all rip. Like I'll just go through infinity walks, go through infinity walks, go through skips. Then go through a little jog and then start ripping it. Because I mean, just with RPR, if you go full 100% into a 100% goat drill, after just doing RPR, I mean, dude, you might mess up your ankle a little bit.
Right.
So like there's still like
some people are fine too.
Yeah, some people are fine. But then but goat drill first of all. Like,
goat drill.
What a
RPR plus goat drill. I think that's
shout
like
out
the big
Dr.
thing.
Sunbeck for those infinity walks, man. Shout out Corfist and Cal for sort of taking it.
Right.
And Dan Fichter,
I think that the goat drill with RPR as a warm-up is the best thing you can do. I think that, and then adding in the high-quality sprints on top of that, I think adds another layer. I think like it just lights up your brain and your system. Like it just gets you so ready to go. You just did something that's 100% full effort. You did something that like helps with your brain and like making sure you're coordinating movements right. And honestly, I do think the goat drill clears a lot of stuff with all the different foot strikes, the eye positions, the head positions. Like, I think you do get a lot of things out of that in terms of like even like spinal reflexes. Like, I think that everything is just like firing at a higher level.
Because you're turning on both sides of your brain at a different time. Because math is activating. Let me say this wrong. I think coordination.
Left side, right?
Coordination is right side. Left side is, I think, like more creative and stuff like that. I believe. So you're activating both sides of your brain at the same time while trying to complete a task.
Yep.
Like.
And again, I think all the like what's a better way to warm up your body than getting every almost every co-contraction possible. You know, every time your foot strikes, you get
your head's here, your hips are
right. You get a co-contraction up the body. Your eyes are looking in a direction. Your head's a certain direction. Your foot's getting torqued a certain way. Like, you're getting all these.
You're doing math.
Yeah, you know,
just hard enough already.
Honestly, you're getting the tongue posture.
Dude,
it's like
some of the best athletes that I've ever coached.
Yep.
The first time that they did the goat drill, their shin is so low, and they can almost lean their whole entire body weight into the circle.
It's smooth.
And they just rip through. Caleb Kimbaloo, the first time he did a goat drill, 6 a.m, he didn't even stretch. He goes into the gym. He does a goat drill. It looks better than anybody that I've ever seen do the drill.
Yep.
And that's an athlete where if it's honestly a testing tool too.
It is.
Because if we have an athlete coming to the gym for the first time, okay, we're going to RPR, do a little dynamic stuff, a little check-in, maybe do a full complete warm-up, whatever. I want to see you on the goat drill. I want to see how your foot works.
Yep.
If you run an ugly goat drill, I guarantee you're not going to be able to change direction.
Not just that, right? Just like athleticism as a whole.
Yeah.
If you want to develop athleticism, that's probably one of the best tools you can use. Yeah. Besides playing, going out and playing a sport.
Yeah.
But if you can't coordinate your arms and your legs to do something completely different while looking somewhere, while doing, like, honestly, if you haven't done the goat drill before and you do 101, start at 101, come back from 3 as you're in the goat drill, you're never going to feel more stupid trying to count in your life.
Watching people try it the first time.
Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah, especially like Gen Pop. I'm like looking at him like, this
Curtis,
is tough for you.
Curtis was struggling. But like it's the whole point, like there's a guy that posts, who works with a lot of young kids, and he posts their goat drill progressions. And these kids are like 9, 10 years old, and they're like they can barely do it. And then they post like a year later, and the dude's just ripping it. And then he posts like them lifting. I gotta find this guy. He posted lifting, and these kids are lifting like 50 to 100 pounds more than anyone else their age.
Yeah, and also like this is something that we talked about with Cal on the triphasic roundtable that one Sunday, using the goat drill in a rehab setting to be able to relearn
with Maria.
and reintegrate motor patterns faster. So like with this girl that we're helping rehab right now, she had 3 knee surgeries. We got her right out of the brace. We ran an hour of square one on her. We did some RPR on her. But it's been only a week of her doing Mito with RPR daily, goat drill daily, square one between every rep and every set of every single exercise.
Yep.
And her knee flexion has improved by 20 to 30 degrees.
Maybe even 35.
Maybe even more.
Yep.
And she commented that like in the first time she did the goat drill, her knee was buckling a little bit, like the foot wasn't working. Now she's able to get around even quicker. I wish she took some videos. But my gosh, for even a rehab setting, not even a sports performance setting, there are so many different things that it's good for. It could be good for learning. Like if you're a teacher, we're trying to teach, timetables quicker.
Yep. Crazy,
Put the kid in a goat drill, like maybe just see if that makes him
can't mess up an ankle there.
Yeah, right?
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, that brings up a whole other thing. Like these days, like with kids like being like here with stuff, or even like
eyes are just so like
I don't know. I just feel like all these a lot of problems that we experience with like little kids and like being like, oh, they have ADHD or ADD or all these things. It's like, what if they're just like they're just like their eyes and their vision and their vestibular system and all these.
There's a great fix for that. Shout out Kelly Bento, by the way.
Yeah,
but I mean blue light glasses. But no, I completely agree.
It's like there's kids are so like unengaged. Like my mom was a teacher, 2nd grade teacher, kindergarten teacher. She had a book on oh my gosh, I can't remember what it's called right now. We'll link it later. But it had a bunch of different movements, like doing a figure 8 with their arm, and then doing a few math problems, or crossing your arms and legs. Yeah. And there are different like reflexes or different patterns that you can do to go through in your body that it's being completely lost in the classroom right now. We're just expecting a kid to, like, I for example have behavior issues, And there are definitely some things.
But you still have them.
I do, yeah, right. But and you're diagnosing kids with a learning disability.
Yeah,
maybe they're just
let's give them Adderall.
Right.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Well, maybe they're just not in the right environment to learn.
Yeah,
What can we do with your environment to help you learn better?
Right.
Well, what 5 to 10-year-old boy is going to want to sit in a chair for 6 to 7 hours while getting blasted with blue light and EMFs?
Hell
Yeah.
no,
Like,
G.
no one's, you're
Right,
going to be
man.
messed up from that. Anyone's going to be messed up.
Yeah,
from
they're
that.
meant to be like we're meant to be like out doing something, learning that way, and it's like as much as like, basic math and reading comprehension and, all these basic
Freaking
schools.
recess.
Well, they're
G.
trying-
Let's
well,
go,
they're
let's go
they're all
outside
important.
and have recess.
Well, they're
3
cutting
times, man.
recess and they're also cutting physical education. They're trying to cut PE and recess.
And they're feeding them-
because they need to learn more. It's
Yeah.
like they're going to learn more doing. How many times you go to PE in your next class, you actually pay attention?
Yeah.
Yep.
Every
And-
single time.
I think you're about to say this. They're feeding them like junk
Feeding them
too.
junk.
Yeah, I mean, there's a free lunch, there's a free breakfast program in Minnesota right now. Guess what they're feeding them? Muffins and
Yeah.
orange juice and just fucking sugar bombing them.
Yeah.
And then it's
Yeah, no, it's tough.
man.
It's tough.
It's,
Get them some milk.
yeah,
Crazy
Some milk
world.
and some eggs.
some milk.
Give
Give
them
some
some
eggs.
Give some
Yeah.
eggs.
It's a crazy
Why
world.
don't schools just invest in chickens? Because you could teach a whole thing on gardening and agriculture and livestock. You could have some chickens. You get your eggs already paid for.
Not here, man. Not in the
Nah,
US.
it makes too much sense. You can't do it.
I can't believe this is a strength coach
strength coach,
podcast. We're talking about
Dude,
how
it's messed up.
everybody else.
Well,
should
I
do
mean,
their
so,
job.
okay. This is bad.
Great. I love this.
So with a lot of DCs, I mean, I think it's more common in DCs than in regular PTs, and definitely more than MDs. But this sort of outside the box, holistic type of thinking, because DC in the scope of medicine, is unfortunately more towards this pseudoscience way of thinking, and so which is, I don't even have words to describe that. But
It is what it is.
It is,
you know?
but
It is what it is.
But within that, what are your, as someone who's going to be a DC and who's been in that world, both your parents are DCs, with this whole new, I guess we can call it quantum health, or this new way of thinking about eating and living.
Yeah.
Where do you see you incorporating that into your practice?
I just feel like it's kind of a similar thing with like the strength and conditioning side of things. It's like it's either everything matters or nothing matters, and it's just like,
Don't get us started.
it's just like,
and
it's like sometimes that one little thing, that one little lifestyle change makes the biggest difference for somebody. Sometimes like it's like, oh, maybe trying to incorporate magnesium into like your daily routine is going to make a difference, and sometimes that just makes the biggest difference for people. Or sometimes where you're sourcing your water from, or or like how you're wearing blue light glasses at certain times of the day, or like just like I don't know, just like the little things, right? It's always those little things that add up, like changing the oil that you cook your food with, or what you're brushing your teeth with, and that sort of stuff. It's like all that stuff does matter, it 100% does. It's just like, are you willing to do those things? Are you willing to go source your food locally? Are you willing to pay maybe a little bit extra for certain things, or be very strict with yourself on how you're going to do some things? And I think that, bringing awareness to that to people, it's like, hey, like, you think you've exhausted all your options, from like the medical side of things, but you haven't tried this, and that in terms of like lifestyle changes. So like you haven't exhausted your options, It's like, because I have like, again, I personal train people that their sleep schedule is built upon their work schedule, Like you're an MD working overnight, so you're a nurse that has to do overnights. It's like you're having a bunch of problems, or like these specific problems, but it's like, again, you as like an organism are in a very stressed state all the time, because you have like your circadian rhythm is just way off the charts, It's just like your body doesn't know what it's doing half the time, because it's like you don't have a regular sleep schedule. So like, I don't know. I think that incorporating it in every way possible, it's letting people know about these different options for things. It's like, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you tried starting your morning with this? Incorporating this into your diet. Trying supplementing with this thing. I think that all those things could work. But a lot of times it's like, again, you have to be willing to accept it. Like, let them try something and then it doesn't work. It's like, that wasn't it. Like, again, like, I think you should still keep doing that thing, whatever that recommendation was, because it's probably good for you. But like, if it's not fixing their problem, you got to be willing to hop on and try to find something else that maybe is actually getting down to the roots of their problem. Because that's the thing, is like, especially going into chiropractic, it's like most people are not going to be coming to me because like, oh, I feel great, what can you do for me? which would be awesome still. I think there's a lot of value in going to see chiropractors in almost any profession, even when you are feeling really good. But most people are going to be coming to me with a problem, and likely a problem they've had for years, you know, and like that's when this outside the box thinking comes into play a little bit more, because it's just like ideas and thought processes that no one else has given them yet. So, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that we had talked about a lot is that for you as a DC, you're going to be working with people that have pain, that have injuries, that need your help with those things. And, you know, you already have a deep bag to help somebody get to the highest possible entry point for exercise. One of the things that you and I have talked about in the past is that overcoming isometrics are very, very underutilized.
I would say isometrics in general.
Isometrics in general, really. Can you talk about some of the benefits of using isometrics in not just for the performance, but for the rehab side of things too?
Yeah, I think that's just like a non-violent way to induce stress in specific positions. You know, it's like if you know that there's certain muscle actions or certain positions that are triggering to somebody, like you can, you know, desensitize those with isos, in my opinion. You know, you can strengthen the tissue still with those isos. I just, again, like if you're in pain, you haven't tried to do isos yet, what are you doing? Like, you have options on the table here. Like, all you've tried is to take med and have surgery on it. It's like, okay, you haven't even tried to hold these duration isos or maximal intensity isos, whatever they need at the time. But again, I've seen a lot of people like just start doing isometrics on a certain muscle group and their pain goes away. You know, part of that is probably it's desensitized. Part of it is probably you are healing the tissue and driving blood to the area, hopefully. But yeah, it's crazy. I think it's just like most people like don't think to put them in on people's programs, you know. And I just think like you're telling me that there's not a single place in your program to have these, you know? Because I know like Regan he had my job at the U a few years back. Like he talks, I'm like, how do you incorporate them? And he says that he does them weekly. He just kind of chooses some different isos and
like that.
And he does some duration isos at the end of his day. And I'm like, yeah, like that's not gonna ruin anything at all. Like have him hold a split squat iso like every other week, every few weeks or something like that, and just making sure that the tendons are healthy, making sure that they're feeling good in these positions. I think that's, you know, why not, you know?
Yeah. Split squat iso too. You had talked about how like some of the best athletes can always do a long duration split squat iso. At least did you say that? Or
yeah, I have seen.
There's some correlation it seems to be between.
I have seen. You know, I'm not a big fan of mental toughness training.
Yeah.
I think it's just a bunch of BS. I think you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
But some of the really mentally tough athletes I've coached, we'll do a split squat competition, and I want to see how long you can stay in that position. And I don't care how the form looks. I'm not going to be super strict about it. You know, I'm not Jay Schrader. I'm not going to nitpick every little position and joint angle that you have. I want to see how long you can hang out down there without leaving, right? And we've had kids to hold anywhere from, this is going to be a little unbelievable, I have coaches that can back me up on this, anywhere from 13 minutes to 30 minutes of an athlete hanging out in the same position without moving. It's like, it's, you know, if you can do something like that, you can do a whole lot of other things too, right?
Oh yeah. Again, and I think, I mean, it doesn't mean to train for that. It
just
means that,
do that.
you can do that. And the same thing, I think, with a lot of like athletes, I think something that gets kind of thrown to the wayside is this, you know, oh, these guys are so elite that, and all these videos of like, you know, Saquon squatting, and all these like Nick Chubb squatting 600, all these videos you see of all these athletes doing these crazy things in the weight room, and people are like, oh, like, if I do that, I can do that. It's like, no, they're just super fucking athletic that they can do that. It's not that because they can do that they're athletic, it's just that they're so athletic that they can do that.
Right.
I think that's something that gets lost too, is a lot of people think, oh, I have to train like this, or I have to hit these. You and I were talking about the other day, I can't stand these, oh, here's our measurement for, you know, lineman bench press. Here's our our squat. Here's our squat standard. It's like you have no clue what you're doing if you think that there needs to be a standard weight lifted per position.
Right. Or like in track, like when people show clips of like Usain Bolt lifting. And I'm like, dude, he barely lifted.
No.
Like, come on. Are you kidding me? You look at him, but they'll use the same exercises too, like the same 4 clips of him.
Dude, it's so
lifting.
Whack.
No, it's whack. And then like Noah Lyle's power cleaning. It's like, okay, man, I'm sure he does do weightlifting because you know, you can't run every single day.
I'll let you go off this tangent about Noah Lyles with his anti-triple extension, or Noah Lyles not getting to, and coaches being like,
all right, This
why
is
not?
a good one. Yeah, this is a
why
good
not?
thing to get into here. Triple extension. Yeah. Are we really training triple extension in the weight room? If we're, like jumping is triple extension. Broad jumping is triple extension. The first step in your sprint, you out of the blocks, you might see an elite athlete triple extend. Maybe even the second step. But after that, there is no triple extension. No. They stay flexed. They stay flexed so that they can keep tension in certain muscles. And when you try to coach somebody to push, it makes them slower.
Dude,
okay? I didn't have to coach track for 10 years to know that. I had to coach track for 1 year to understand
Well, it's the same thing with dragging your toe.
Oh my gosh.
If you're dragging your toe, you can't push that foot back into the ground. It requires more energy to, one, pick that leg back up because it's not tension, and two, you have nothing to like actually push from.
Right.
So like dragging the toe happens. Why does it happen? Well, they're so fucking explosive that their body has no other option but to say, I gotta get going.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're that explosive to do that, don't coach them out of it either, because it's what makes them fast. But if you're trying to tell athletes, you need to either drag your toe or triple extend, you're fucking them up because they have nothing left to then push into.
So many of these Instagram coaches, and there are high-level coaches that work with high-level athletes that tell people, okay, you got to drag your toe. Why is the toe dragging?
If they're getting
the foot and the Achilles are working.
If they're getting faster,
should, right?
though, if they're getting faster, like, great, right?
Great. Don't touch it. Let them be.
Yeah.
Let the numbers kind of speak to your efforts, right? Like one cue that Corfist had was step width. When you're accelerating, get a little bit of step width. Maybe get a board out that's about 13 inches wide and have athletes try and get step width.
Yep.
And that exposes a lot of issues. Like if they're not able to get step width and you look at them in the frontal plane behind them out of their blocks and their hip sags below the other hip, they have a lateral chain issue. They might have to do some things for that, right?
Right.
But it's like with speed training in particular, and this was something that Sam talked about earlier, is that we don't always have to coach somebody to get into a certain position. Like, yes, there's value in doing that unless you know exactly what you're doing. But if you don't, shut up and find good drills and exercises that actually put them in that position.
Right.
Right? Like
figure out why they can't get there.
Like making somebody run low under like a certain hurdle, that is not going to elicit the adaptation that you want. It's going to make them hunched.
Oh, remember that video? Remember that video of these like Asian kids running under this like looked like an airplane wing, and it would slowly let them get up.
Yeah, it's like that's really going to mess somebody up, man. Especially if they don't have the strength to get a low shin, and
I feel like
the fact is too,
they can't roll or rotate the shin down.
It's my whole thing with we both have Garrett Boyum, and he's big on this constraint-led approach type of coaching where you put them in a constraint to elicit their response, this ecological dynamics. But my whole issue with that has always been, okay, whatever constraint, and this is obviously in the baseball realm, but you can apply it to sprinting, you can apply it to anything. If you're going to put them in a constraint, make sure they can actually get there in the first place. Because if they can't get there in the first place, putting them in the constraint to put them where you think they should be, they're not going to be doing it correctly. Like if you're trying to get them to stay low, they're going to hunch at the spine versus actually push the shin down, get a better shin angle.
Yeah.
Or in throwing, if you're trying to get someone's arm up, tell them to speed up might make that problem even worse.
Yeah.
Because the arm might be starting to jump up. So like, it doesn't matter like with the whole constraint thing. Like make sure they can actually get in there. Now, is it mobility, strength, neurological? Like, is there like an actual issue that can, they can't get there, or is it they just never been coached properly?
Yeah.
So there's so many things I think to look at before just throwing a random constraint at someone, saying, go do this. This will fit. Like again, to your point, it's different for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm kind of a pretty firm believer in that. Like, if you're in a good place in terms of like, you have healthy feet, you have healthy hips, you have your systems are working really well, as in like your muscle slings, and like they test, you're testing them and they're testing strong and everything. Like, you just feel like the athlete's in a good place. If they run and they run a certain way, or they throw and they throw a certain way, I feel like it's kind of supposed to be like that. I do think that their body and their brain is organizing them in the best way to do it possible.
Especially a team sport athlete.
Yeah,
right?
but
we might not have to, train somebody to run differently.
I think that you
their
just
body is trying to organize them around a sport and a motor pattern or a situation that they played for their entire life, right? Like a field hockey player might run a little bit more bent over than like a soccer player might run with completely different gait than and Ken Clark recently released a paper about the differences in fast team sport athletes, slow team sport athletes, fast track and field athletes, and slow track and field athletes. And it's like, Everybody, depending on their situation or context, is going to have a specific form.
Yep.
And when you are sitting here and you're like, oh, you need a triple extender, your
You need
hips
to
need
do
to be
this,
more
yeah.
stacked and not anteriorly rotated. It's like, do you understand exactly what you're doing?
I think there's definitely room for that stuff, but like I said though, at the same time, like if they are like you're testing them and they feel good and they're getting better and they're not having any problems, it's like, why am I trying to change what they're doing? Because I think that you're just gonna be layering in a compensation. Like almost,
well, there's a saying that it's super big in the baseball world, but elite athletes are elite compensators.
Yeah.
Like it's no more true than, I mean, look at any professional athlete. You look at something they do. Like look at LeBron run.
Yep.
You watch that dude run, duck feet for days.
Oh yeah.
Dude's so turned out. But then you look at him, dude's 40. What is he? 41 now. And he's dunking.
Yeah, he's fine.
It's like, shut up.
Yeah.
Or like Gout throwing an arm, right? Or like, or Adrian Peterson literally bobbing his head, running like a horse.
Right.
What the, are you really think you changing that is going to make him faster?
Right. And like if and then again, you check him, maybe you, like if I saw the head going a lot, I'd probably try to check his vision,
check him and then be like, oh wait, the dude just won an MVP.
Yeah, and they like and that's the other thing is like don't make a problem out of something there's not a problem there. Like
if they have issues, maybe go look.
If they're breaking down consistent, like if they're breaking down and having problems, like then that's your opportunity to be like, okay, let's try this. Let's try.
But even then, like if they're elite, just take baby steps towards it. Don't just like, oh, we're gonna change all this. Take like, instead of taking a foot, take like 2 inches. Like go short and then see if that fixes it. Because if you go too far, you can't pull back.
Right.
Especially with fixing someone. Like if you're
going to change your mechanics, but you're a professional athlete, why would we?
Dude, the amount of times I've heard people say, "Oh, to professional pitchers, we're going to change your mechanics, or we're going to change something about you." It's like, bro, it's like, what are you doing? Like the guy is winning awards. He's paid tens of millions of dollars. And you're going to change stuff about him. Yeah. Granted, it might work, but like you're really going to change something on someone who spent 10 years doing this is at the highest level possible. Like, you're just doing that just to say you did something.
Right.
If they don't have issues, you're right.
If they don't have issues. It's an ego thing. If they don't have issues. But some people see issues as in, oh, stats went down. Well, why did stats go down?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take a look into it. Are they moving the same? Yeah. Are there measurables the same? Is their weight room stuff the same? Is their scale ever used to measure their skill the same? Yes. Okay. Well, then, as a strength coach, you should get the fuck out of there and go to the skill coach. Be, hey, man, what's going on? But it's is it not the coexistence model, but it's the tactical, physical, and psychological component of being an athlete. Like, the psychological and the physical are there, and they're not playing well. It's tactical or technical.
Yeah.
There's something going on with, well, it wouldn't even be technical, it'd be tactical. They're just not using their body the best they can in their actual sport, not from a physical standpoint, but from a standpoint of, hey, we have to make better decisions with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so, now you're going to completely uproot this dude just to say, oh, yeah, I changed him. I fixed him.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, like, if all you do is run the 100-meter, like, I would hope that your sprint coach is, making sure that, like, because I do think that there are, like, correct movements, like, but again, they're not going to look the same from person to person.
Right.
Like, whatever you need to do to test that, like, again, like, you watch Usain Bolt run versus, like, a hockey athlete, it's going to look very different, but, like, again, if it's working for them, if they're getting faster, they're improving their sprint times or improving their performance on the ice, like, that's all you can really ask for.
I think it's more so there are checkpoints you should hit versus transitions. I think that's where it gets lost, because you can watch someone with your eyes and be like, that looks stupid, and then you slow it down. You're like, okay, they hit this point, they hit this point, they hit this point. So it's not necessarily like, oh, they're running wrong, or they're throwing wrong, or they're jumping wrong. You just don't like how they transition from one spot to the next.
Yeah.
But they're still doing it correctly. Mm-hmm. They're still hitting their correct positions. They're still getting the midfoot. They're still getting the terminal swing.
Yeah.
They're still doing all these things correctly. Right. But how they transition from one piece to the next isn't, appealing to the eyes.
Right. I think maybe one thing to walk back a little here is that, like, with hockey athletes, why are we focusing on speed training? This is something that I had asked Cal, because the time that I had came into the U of M was the time that they were doing on-ice testing and off-ice testing. So it was very, very interesting, because I went up to him on the ice. This is the first question I ever asked him. I'm like, so how do you measure, like, what we're doing in the weight room and how we can make that translate to the ice. And the first thing he had told me was there's an extremely high correlation coefficient between the skate test that you guys did, where you skate to the blue line, skate back, skate all the way around, right? Yep. And then the 30-meter dash time. So somebody like a Sam Renzel is going to be fast on the ice and also fast off the ice. And if you're the fastest off the ice, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be the fastest on the ice. But if you're fast on the ice, you're probably going to be pretty fast off the ice. And the correlation coefficient was something like 0.95.
Yeah.
It was probably 0.96. And that's what Cal had even called. He was like, it's probably going to be like 0.97. Right. And it was just a little bit below that. So how do you see speed training as the focus for what you're doing at the University of Minnesota? How do you see that improving performance on the ice, not just for hockey, but also soccer and basketball and volleyball maybe, and some of these other sports that might, like sprinting might not be the motor pattern,
right?
But it has a super high, reflection of the task that, because Jared and I have been talking about this with pitchers. You've tweeted a lot of great things about this.
Yeah, I do.
Speak to that?
I think that like gait-oriented exercises like sprinting are very neurologically friendly, and also like your bodies have kind of evolved to like do it. Like we were definitely evolved to be a running species. If you look at like just like how we're built, and when you put max effort into a sprint, your body undergoes just forces and like movement patterns that just don't happen in other exercises. So I think that like training for speed, and then specifically like sprinting speed, it helps keep the athlete healthy for one, but it allows them to it raises their ceiling to do other things better. If you're able to strike the ground at a very high force, very fast, then when you get over to playing hockey, you're able to stride out with similar forces. It's not going to be the same. You're not striking the ground in the same manner, but your ability to coordinate those movements is going to be, I think, pretty intertwined.
Yep.
Also just again, kind of raising the ceiling, just generally, if you're able to contract and relax and, use proper movement patterns when you're sprinting, you're probably going to be better off doing most of the other things in the weight room as well, and on the ice or on the field with whatever you're doing. It's going to keep you healthy in the long term, I think.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like you always say, the research says there's nothing you can do to replace the sprinting.
You can't replace
it. We were talking with Chris Martin, and he was saying, he goes, pitchers don't sprint in their sport, doesn't mean you shouldn't sprint them.
Right.
Just because you don't see sprinting in your sport. Dude, even if you're a professional curler, so you do curling, all right? If you sprinted, you'd probably be a healthier human being in general.
Yep.
So it's not even the fact of making you a better athlete, it's making you, a healthier person. And people want to talk about all these biomarkers and, all these things. Dude, one of the biggest things that's correlated to living longer is being able to sprint.
Yeah.
Look at old people, look at older people or elderly people, and look at their gait.
Yeah.
Look at the ones that sprinted, ones that haven't sprinted for long periods of time.
Yeah, that dude in the crunch, that was 70, ripping bounds down the turf.
He was ripping prime times.
Yeah.
That dude.
And I think, you don't even talk about this much when you're just doing sprinting, but your proprioception and your vision and your vestibular system are working at such a high level with that stuff. It's again, it just raises your ability to do other things.
That's why I like the back squat, because it is a fundamental motor pattern, being able to sit down and stand up.
Yeah.
But sprinting is the most fundamental motor pattern, because every single joint action is involved in every single plane, or however you want to look at it. And with young athletes in particular, one of the things that I see butchered, and this is something that I was guilty of my first few years of coaching, is not emphasizing speed.
Yeah.
Because before you turn 18, you can get really strong, but to be honest with you, after you're 18, it's going to be really hard to raise your ceiling on speed and jumping, because your fascial slings are pretty much done developing.
Yeah.
And look at somebody like Mark Bell trying to sprint right now.
Yeah.
When he spent decades trying to lift as heavy as possible.
Yeah.
Does he look very fluid? Not at all. So with youth athletes, speed probably needs to be the focus, opposed to trying to turn them into a power lifter. And as a strength coach, a lot of coaches are going to hang their hat on
a large portion of that is actually just teaching all this movement to happen in sync, right? I bet you Mark Bell has a bunch of spinal problems probably that like
Probably, yeah.
he's just not able to like get that spinal torquing and the hip torquing like that you want to see when you're doing those actions, you know. And yeah, so I 100% agree.
But you're still gonna get strong though if you sprint.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
At max velocity, I believe, but it's 5 times your body weight. It's hitting the ground at max V.
Yeah.
Their mid stance. I think it's five times your body weight. You're gonna on one leg. You're gonna go load up a 5 times body weight single leg squat.
Yeah.
Or RFE. You're not like that. If you want to, like,
Yep.
yes, it's not gonna be this. You know, you're probably not gonna develop as fast because you're not actively like selectively loading local tissue.
Yep.
But like, it's a great way to get stronger. It's a great way to get abs.
Right.
It's a great way to be healthy. It's one of the best things you can fundamentally do as a human.
Yep.
Right.
Sprinting, man. It's a game changer.
Yeah, like Tony Holler will say, like, speed is a barometer for health.
Yep.
And that's going to be true whether you do, 3 fly 10s, take 5 minutes to rest, or you do an RSA model.
Yep.
Is that, like, the numbers need to be the thing that's sort of pushing where you
I think
wanna go.
that's true. I think it is like a good general marker of like just like general ability. Like if you can run fast, like you are in a pretty good spot from like a neuromuscular standpoint, you know? Like if you can't run fast, it's like something's off. Something's not right.
Here's the thing. How do we classify athleticism? Sprinting fast.
Making it happen.
Being fast, being good at
It's
your
being
sport.
fast.
Making it happen.
Putting the biscuit in the freaking
Putting the biscuit in the
bag.
bag. Well, no, I mean,
the-
obviously.
Putting the ball in the
Well,
hoop,
let's not say, let's say athleticism.
Like just like
Oh,
quality.
the
yeah,
qualities.
yeah,
What is
yeah.
it? It's being fast.
Yeah, it's being
being twitchy. It's being fast.
fluid, yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to be like.
I think that's a very deep concept though. I think it's also like your ability to like repeat being fast.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. 100%.
You know? Or like
again, no one
being
cares how good you are.
resilient to being fast because like there is a lot that happens when you're fast that you need to be able to tolerate. So that's why I was saying I think it's a good general marker of like you said, like Tony Holler said for general health, just because like I bet you look at speed over the lifespan, you get something that looks like this, and you're dead. You know, like,
He's still gonna be sprinting 6 feet under.
Yeah, you're gonna be running still.
We'll bury him.
10
We'll bury him with the
meters a second
1080. Bury him with the 1080.
Dead.
Yep.
Yeah. Facts.
Yeah. No.
All right.
Speed training is the best thing you can. That's always the goal. It's always the goal.
Good. Yeah. We're all on the same page there.
This was sick.
Yeah.
This
Thank
is
you
awesome.
so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for
This is
coming
great.
down
Yeah,
here
of course. It's
and
been a
coming to
great
visit
time.
us.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? Oh, let me think.
Yeah, let's think.
You think you can survive an altitude drop off this?
What's that?
You'd live.
20 feet?
I think you'd
Probably
live.
30 feet down.
Adapt or die.
Wouldn't feel good, but
On the concrete or the grass?
I will go grass. We'll be nice.
Okay.
Too. We'll be nice.
Breaking a leg for sure.
breaking something.
Snapping something. Snap City.
Unless you hit the ninja roll.
I'm trying to think if I got anything for you guys.
Yeah.
No, we're not here. This is to ask you questions.
Yeah.
Both of us share our thoughts too much on social
wait,
media.
do you have any?
I'm trying to think of
Do you have
something
any
right now.
questions? One question I had is we could do this all day.
Yeah.
Games at the U.
Oh, yeah.
We've been
small
playing
side
games
games.
now. We're college, right?
Yep.
And we're trying to develop athletes in
Yep.
the athleticism category. One thing that Locken had asked is incorporating more games. And when I was at Velocity, they played a lot of games.
Yep.
There were a lot of games going on.
Yep.
And like you went to Yoakum's gym. We have shared this experience at different times. You go in there and they're playing games for maybe an hour on some days, maybe just 15 minutes.
I think that he was mentioning he does have like a game day.
Like Tuesday or Thursday.
Yeah,
some days,
Thursday
one-
afternoon, yep.
One of the games. So for like middle school athletes, I feel a little bad about this.
Yep.
But the coach that was there before had done circuit training.
Yep.
Right? Nothing wrong with that. Sure, fine. You're going to get some adaptations. We played games every day instead.
Yep.
And I swear that probably helped their athleticism more than anything else ever could.
Yep.
What do you think about games for that 14 to 18 group?
I think it's great. I think it's another depends answer because like say that you got this 14-year-old that's in 3 sports and it's like he did a practice in a game and then now he's in with you for his workout for the day. It's like, all right, what do we do, right? I think that like if they're gonna train, if they're willing to train hard and like train for strength at that point as a young athlete and be bought in on it, like I think that'd be great because they're probably they already played a game today. They already did their thing. It's like
strength training is going to be the best.
I think that like doing some maybe like trying to get some. I don't know how much high quality you're gonna get out of it at that point, anyways. But like just trying to doing something that they're not doing already. But like I think that for an athlete that's not playing any type of, competitive games, but again, that's just, I feel like that doesn't happen in youth athletes a lot, like, especially like younger youth athletes, like they're playing a variety of sports and they're getting a game in tomorrow night or whatever, and it's like the best thing they can do for themselves is to play that specific game, or a specific sport. But I think that where the games fit in a little bit better is like, if you know that this athlete, has a hard time stopping and starting and changing direction, then maybe trying to add in a game that emphasizes that quality and putting him in that specific situation, somehow making it competitive. I feel like that would be better than just playing a random game, Like instead of just playing spike ball for a long time, it's like, all right, let's put him in a situation, like this athlete has a hard time, cutting. Let's put him in a situation, in a game-like situation where they can cut, I think that's where that could fit in a little bit better,
Absolutely.
I think games are great, but like I don't think that, again, it depends on the athlete, depends on where they're at. Like if you need to do it for their buy-in, then do it, but I don't know. I think you're better off doing other things most of the time. I think it could be a great warm-up tool. But yeah, I think you're better off doing other things for the most part.
Like, where do you fall on the spectrum? Are you lifting heavy 3 times a week? You only play one sport.
Yeah.
Maybe games are probably better for you,
so
right?
a couple games. Yeah, adding that variety in, right? Regan and I were talking about this like just before I came here, and he was like, yeah, adding in specific games. It's like using it as like a contrast. Like, maybe you do your 10-10-10, but then after you do your 10-10-10, you do some quick, scenario based, like almost mystery, like game, where they're trying to cut or make a move or something like that, I think that could fit in pretty well in that sense. So like if I were to do that, like with our athletes currently, I would, go upstairs, I would do RPR, I would run a goat drill, I would run our high quality sprint, and then I'd maybe mix in something like that, like a quick 20 to 30 second drill that's emphasizing the change of direction. That's something like that,
I like that.
I think for having team sport athletes coming in and just like spending, even more than like 10 or 15 minutes on like a game, it's just like, I'd rather spend my time doing something else at that point, especially if they're getting play in other places of their life. A lot of our athletes that come in the summer, like, it's like they're already skating a few times a week. They're getting their 3-on-3 hockey and they're getting their 5-on-5 scrimmages in. Like they're playing, they're getting their play in. I think that's enough of that. Unless again you have a specific scenario that every time you watch them in tape or something, they make the same mistake. It's like, okay, let's try to simulate this situation off the ice and try to maybe train it. But again, though, like you almost need to just replicate. If you're playing hockey, you almost need to just replicate it on the ice. So if you're playing lacrosse, like you almost need to just put the stick in your hand and make the situation or try to make the situation happen at like practice. Because I just don't think that like the games themselves. If you're playing spike ball or whatever, volleyball or something off the ice, I think it'd be fun, or pick up basketball. It's like, but I don't think that's gonna like translate to like your what you're lacking in your actual sport. Yeah. I don't know.
I got anything.
I think they're fun.
Yeah. Gotta do some games. We'll probably figure out a way to incorporate it somehow.
Yeah. Like I said, I think the best way to do it is somehow like mocking a situation, like making them like make a move or making them do something like that. Or if it's like, I don't know, how would you do it for top end speed, you think? If you wanted to do like make a quick competition for top end speed, wouldn't you just like make them sprint against each other?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had athletes that the only way they'd run a PR is if they had somebody running in the lane next to them.
Yep.
And
competition,
whether that's ego or whatever.
Yep.
It's just an adrenaline response at that point.
Yeah, adrenaline response, like don't want to lose. Like,
adding in,
if that elicits the adaptation.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do.
What Regan said was adding in an objective. So like maybe in power you do a depth jump up to a box, but you continually raise the height of the box in power. But then in strength, maybe you don't get that extra reflexive bounce off the ground. Maybe you just have them jump from a pause at the bottom trying to get to their highest point. That sort of thing. I don't know. Adding an objective in to the jump or to the sprint or to the activity they're doing, I think is a similar effect to the game. It adds the competition side of things, and I think the competition side of things is very important. Like having them see their sprint numbers over and over again. Like, am I getting faster? Am I getting more powerful? Am I jumping higher? Adding in some sort of like measurable. I think that's important.
We might have to contrast like a dunk on an adjustable rim.
Yeah.
We already talked about. We're getting an adjustable rim. That's happening.
Getting like an objective, like you're saying, like change the box height or whatever it is.
Yeah, like I liked what we did the other day at Crunch when we put the force plate down. I think that was pretty good for me. Like that made me want to jump as as much as I always like to think I'm jumping as high as I can. Like I'm watching my jump height or my some of these numbers on that. I'm watching myself jump and hit higher numbers. It's like, okay, this is fun. This is good.
It's good for
sprinting. Same thing. 1080. Like we're measuring every sprint. It's like I saw myself increasing my speed every rep that I was going on it, which was like
objective feedback is always going to be better than non-objective feedback.
It's great.
It just at the same time though, you just can't be too focused on your number and just
because sometimes when you have a bad day, you're like, oh fuck, I'm slow.
Because then you just start sandbagging. Then you start sandbagging the rest of your lift. You're like, oh, I'm this, and where it's like. And then it goes to the athletes. Some athletes, we're probably going to tell them their numbers, and some athletes, we're just not going to tell them their numbers.
Yep.
Because we're going to learn that some.
Yeah, no,
we're going to learn that some athletes, like if you tell them they're having a bad day, you just ruin their entire day.
I'd be behind 1080, true, bro. And a lot of athletes would come up and be like, "How am I doing? Like, what's?"
And a lot of times,
you're good. You're good.
Yeah, that's a lot of times. Unless they have like something crazy happening that's amazingly good, I'm like, oh yeah, like look at this, like you're off the charts right now.
Yeah.
If they're having like a not the best day, I'll just be like, yeah, it's looking good. Like
it's looking good. Yeah.
It's looking because it is still good. I mean, you're not always gonna have your best day.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching them run. Like how am I doing? Like you're doing good. Like you're trying hard. Like it's what I want. Like this is awesome.
And at the end of the day, like intent drives adaptation.
Yeah.
Even if you're not sprinting as fast as you can, but you're sprinting as hard as you can, you're still driving neural adaptations.
Right.
You're still matching angles. You're still getting joint angles. You're still getting all these other adaptations. You're just not running as fast as you can. Which all that means you're just not moving your legs fast.
Right.
Why? You're probably fucking tired.
Yeah.
Because you're running a high density, high volume program.
Right. It's like it's Friday. It's your last rep. Like how was that one? Like I'll tell you, it's not the best. Just because you've done the whole week of training in 3.5 sets. It's like it's fine. But yeah, it's all part of the game though. Mm-hmm. It's all part of the game.
All right, I think now we should end it. I think that's...
How long has it been?
I don't know. When did we start?
2 hours, let's hope.
Let's see.
All right, Sam. What do we got?
It's 1:10. I don't know what time we start.
It's 1:10?
What time did we start?
Dude, it's probably been like close to 2 hours now.
Good.
There we go.
Let's fucking go.
Well,
let's go, Sammy. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you for coming, brother.
Yeah.
Was that good?
Appreciate you.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was
great.
That was
great.
This is going to be legendary, bro.
It's a good
We're
one.
going to put this on the YouTube, man. 20 years, we can look back and be like, what the heck?
We were all stupid. We were all stupid.
We're all dumb.
All right.
All right, man.
That was fun, though. It was fun, though.